Joining us inside
Got
the
a champion here.
Studios.
Got a champion here, ladies and gentlemen.
We've got a member of the last Philadelphia Eagle NFL championship team. Riley Gunnels was a defensive tackle on the 1960 Philadelphia Eagles. They beat the Green Bay Packers in the NFL championship game to win their third league title. You hear that, Giants, Cowboys, and Redskins fans? The Eagles do have championships. Riley, welcome, and thanks for coming in the studio.
Well, thank you for inviting me. You know, it's been 58 years, and I still feel like a champion after that game. And I hope these guys going up there out to Minnesota today will feel the same way I do after it's all over.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we ever hear as Eagle fans. Well, you have no Super Bowls. How many Super Bowls do you have? People they act like these games didn't exist, but you played against great Hall of Famers and just an amazing game in that 60 championship.
That's correct. The guys we played against, I think half the team, their offensive team, was Hall of Famers, Green Bay Packers. Mm-hmm. And we played against an outstanding coach. We were the last and only team to beat them in the post-game play.
Similar to this type of game, right? Lombardi, Belichick. I mean, you got great coaches. So what was that week like, knowing that you got Buck Shaw as your head coach, going up against Lombardi and having to come up with a game plan to outwit the best?
Well, at the time, we felt we had a darn good chance. We had because we had a guy named Norm Van Brocklin, who was also a big leader, and we had some good players on both sides, or on our side of the ball, that hadn't been given the All-Star names yet, but they were there. And the game was a close game. It could have gone either way, but I think just the camaraderie we had with each other kind of put us out front and gave us a little bit of an advantage on that game.
Yeah. Do you remember that week feeling like, I think you said during the break that you guys were an underdog in that game, much like the Eagles have been. Do you remember that week feeling like we're better than this team? We're going to beat this team. Like, did you feel like you had that kind of confidence during the week leading up?
We certainly did. We felt that we wanted to put every ounce of effort we could into preparing ourselves for them. And I think, we watched the films back then. They weren't tapes, but films, and watching those over and over helped us a lot. And I think just believing in each other, having faith in each other, had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, you said we're with Riley Gunnels, 1960 NFL champion for the Philadelphia Eagles. The second and last NFL championship game that was played in Philadelphia, by the way, the only one at Franklin Field. So you look through those names, Riley, Bart Starr, Jim Taylor, Paul Hornig, and Lombardi, who you've talked about. If you were just stacking it up, they had all this experience and all these big names. But how much then did that mean to you guys, the cohesiveness? Because I think that's a theme that maybe the Eagles are trying to bank on. Like, we're 53 together. You guys were a team together.
And that's why I think the Eagles have a good chance. It's because they want to prove something. They're going to prove that they're as good as these big-name people that they're playing against. The Philadelphia Eagles have played good ball most all the year, and if they continue to do that, they have a real good chance of taking these guys from a motivation standpoint.
When I look back and I see that ticket prices for the game were $10 and $8, and what Super Bowl's face value are like $9.75 and $12.50, and people in our area are scrambling to take out second mortgages on their homes just so they can get to Minneapolis. It really gives you pause, doesn't it?
You're correct there. I was so sure we were going to be in that championship game that I requested a big pile of tickets prior to that. And I was able to get some tickets and sell them for $10 a piece. Didn't make me a lot of money. Can you imagine what it would have done today?
A big pile of tickets to today's game, I think you'd be just fine.
That's it. My buddy's just spent $6,000 on a pair of tickets, so that's a little different, right? That could have filled the stadium in 1960, right? You could have had the whole stadium filled for $6,000.
All I can say is thank God for you guys and radio and TV.
Well, guess what? We'll have the game for you here on 97.3 ESPN, and of course we will be in Minnesota starting on Thursday. But that game. There were so many great moments in the game, but is there something that sticks out to you as a guy who played in the game? I mean, so many people just remember like highlights and the main things. But as for someone who played in that game, was there something that kind of stands out? You said it was a 17-13 close game, but you said it was kind of a sloppy game. So was there a moment or something that turned the tides in that game that you remember?
Well, I think it was Van Brocklin's confidence and being able to control the passing. He was able to hit Redslaff with a pass that kind of broke it open, and then he hit McDonald with a pass. He was kind of got off his route, but he was able to catch the ball and score. And if you notice, he was jumped up in the stands like he always does. And, that just gave us a lot of self-motivation.
Well, since you're watching the current team, the Patrick Robinson interception return for a touchdown, that was so loud how the stadium was at Lincoln Financial Field. There are a lot of people saying, even at that point, they're like, oh, the Eagles are going to win that game. When Tommy McDonald catches that 35-yard pass from Norm Van Brocklin, and I'm Norm Van Brocklin, I'm a little too young, but I have seen the clip before. Was that the because you guys were down 6-0 at that point, was that the confidence that you guys, once that took place, so you're like, oh, yeah, we're winning this game?
Yeah, that was a big part. And, of course, as I said before, we, deep in our hearts felt we could win it the whole time. But it was a big part of giving us the confidence we needed.
And you can't talk about that game without talking about Chuck Bednarik and the final play, and he's out there laying on top of Taylor, right? He's laying on top of Jim Taylor. And what did he say to him, Riley?
He says, okay, Jim, you can get up now. The damn game's over. But excuse my language.
No, you're fine. It's 2018. You can say damn now.
But it was not only that, but, Chuck Bednarik and I were pretty close. We both worked for the same company. Actually, I was just a rookie with the Eagles at that time, and Bednarik got me with the concrete company he worked with. Mm-hmm. The only thing about it was I was always upset because nobody ever called me Concrete Riley.
That's true, Concrete Charlie.
And you talked about Van Brocklin, but Tommy Brookshire was on that team.
Oh,
you had guys that really emerged because of that game, right?
Yeah. Tommy Brookshire is another. Every guy on that team was just, as far as I was concerned, was like a brother to me. And it was especially Tommy Brookshire. He was fantastic. He was smart enough to make a mistake and talk his way out of it. So, but he was a great ball player.
You have you mentioned before we came back on the air. Now you're playing the Green Bay Packers, and they have Lombardi. So I guess everybody who looks back and just figures that team was great, Lombardi, but you were surprised. You thought Unitas would be the team and the Colts that you guys would face in that game.
That's correct. I think we all felt that way. We all felt that the Colts were the better team to play that year. Of course, we all had a lot of respect for Unitas and his receivers, but as it turned out, we probably played the best team around, and it was just thrilling to get through it and win that job.
Riley, as we sit here, we talk about the Unitases and the Bart Stars and, Norm Van Brocklin and all these great names, Sonny Jurgensen, right? Great quarterback names. How about what's taken place this season with the Eagles quarterback? Because I'm sure you watched a lot of Carson Wentz through the season. Like, what were your initial thoughts when he went down, and what are your thoughts now that you've seen a couple of games out of Nick Foles, especially what Nick Foles did against the Vikings?
Well, I kind of liked Nick Foles all along when he was here before. I mean, he had a couple of bad games at the end, but I liked him all along. I didn't think he was going to be able to do as well as he's done, but as far as I'm concerned, he's done a great job, and I'm looking for him to do another one this coming game.
Do you still see the game like you're playing it? I mean, when you watch on television, do you still see things like, hey, man, that guy's hands were in terrible position, or that guy could have got an edge right there, and you kind of see it before the rest of your family or other people do, and you wonder, well, why can't they see it? It's plain as day to me.
Except for one fact. There's a guy named Cox that plays that position on that team, and I think I learned a few things by watching him, to be honest with you. But sometimes I picture myself in there playing, and I always play a lot better than I did when I actually played.
Well, we were laughing before when we said that we were going to have you in. I said to Joe, who helped set this up with us, of all the guys, right, you have Van Brocklin and Brookshire. Now, the game has changed so much, but the position you played, you probably could still play in the league today. I mean, your style of play then would translate to now.
Well, I'm heavy enough now, but at the at the time I played, I would have been playing quarterback or some flanker or something.
Well, that game in 1960, by the way, was a lot different too. They played the game at noon. There was no lights.
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah.
No lights at Franklin Field back then.
They were afraid it might be going overtime, and then they wouldn't have any coverage.
Now they went up 10-0.
That was on NBC, I think.
Yeah, they went up 10-0 in that game too, right?
That's right.
Paul Hornung had a touchdown in the game.
Lindsey Nelson, Ray Scott were the announcers on NBC television, and then local Jack Whitaker, who went on to that long career with ABC Sports and doing all the golf. It was Jack Whitaker and Blaine Walsh were the announcers on the radio.
And Jack Whitaker is from Narberth, Pennsylvania, and a real close friend of mine. We always sit with each other on the trips and when we go together. Jack Whitaker was a great guy.
By the way, the television rights in that game were just under $748,000. And each player on the winning team got $5,116. Do you remember what you did with that check?
Well, at the time, I thought it was a pretty good check. I think my wife probably spent it in a couple of weeks at the grocery store.
By the way, the Packers players made $3,100 in that game. So, boy, things have certainly changed. And you can check out the game is on YouTube. If you just check the 1960 NFL Championship game, you can watch the Eagles and the Packers. Now, at the time, the Eagles had won in 49, but 60 was the third time, and they win. Yeah. Did you ever imagine that here we are in 2018, and the Eagles would still not have a championship?
No. I thought they would have won several by now, and God, let's hope they get this one because it's time. It's time.
Because there was a run there in the early 2000s with Andy that, they were getting close every single year, and that was the year that they had to end you guys. But you're still standing on top as the greatest and last.
Well, I'm ready to give it up now. That's whether they win or not, I'm still going to feel like a champion. That's what I tell all of my customers.
Well, that's good. And we know, Riley, you are still here local. I mean, you played for the Eagles. Now, you're from Georgia and went to Georgia and were drafted by the Steelers. But how did you end up staying locally here with what you're doing at Signal Graphics?
Well, my wife is from the mainline area of Philadelphia, and we were married in Philly, and I kind of stayed. I've worked in Center City, Philly, and I worked for Warner Concrete, as a matter of fact.
There you go.
And I came to Ocean City, and not only Ocean City, to several locations here. And when I met a girl down here, and
that'll change it.
And that was before I was married to my wife, and so I kind of that was kind of got us going in this direction. I always liked the shore, and I'm glad we live here.
Well, Riley, we appreciate it. By the way, if you're going to watch the video, look for big number 71 on the defensive line in the 1960 NFL Championship game, Eagles versus the Green Bay Packers. Similar, you got Lombardi was the coach of that team, Belichick the coach of this team. That team was a favorite by about 3.5 points. The Eagles are about a 4.5-point underdog in this game. And as you mentioned, that Packers team had a lot of Hall of Fame star players. The Eagles were very unknown at that time, and maybe the result will be the same. I'll take 17-13, PT. Will you?
Absolutely. As long as the Eagles are on top, that sounds good to me, buddy.
That's the name of the game.
All right. Riley Gunnels, everybody here, kind enough to tell us a couple of stories from the last Eagles championship team, and hopefully on Monday we will be talking about the next one. We appreciate you coming in.
Oh, I enjoyed it. Nice seeing you guys again.